So you guys please welcome Thomas and Chef Paul. Whichever one you want. I put a glass of water next to each chair.
Hi, everyone. Hey, guys. How are you?
Oh, I know someone with another South African accent.
Hi, Michelle. We're really excited to have a South African themed restaurant in Houston going on in Texas. This is really great. Also, I wanted to show you the Cape Town mountain, but also wanted to say that I can't do this on my own, and I wanted the entire crowd here in Cape Town. Here we go. They want to say. All right, there we go. So I hope you guys have a great event and sending lots of love from Cape Town. So it turns out that Nick over here started a really great beer. What's it called?
This is the Cape Town Blonde.
That's a Cape Town Blonde, and it's also one of his very first exports when I went to Peli in Houston. So this is really exciting. So Nick says,
cheers, guys, and enjoy the beer over there.
That's cool. Awesome.
So let me make this live and give it to you.
Unfortunately, we don't have that beer here.
There you go. All right. Well, one of the things that we've discovered over time as we've had these conversations is there's things that we think we're going to learn, and there's things we weren't expecting we were going to learn, and there's a lot of really great wisdom that comes in between the two of them. But what we've learned is if we start off with talking about early influences, it gives all of us a better opportunity to kind of get to know a little bit about you and start to maybe see the red thread that could potentially be going through your life and that's brought you to where you're at. So if it's okay, I'll ask Chef Paul first. Did you grow up in an entrepreneurial family, or is what you grew up with or surrounded by totally opposite of that? Because I know for me it was totally opposite. I had two parents who were accountants, and one's a CPA, and I couldn't be any different from them if I tried.
No, actually, my mom was a housemaker, and she just loved her children. And she would come to all of our soccer events, rugby events, and so on. Dad was he was a worker, and we didn't get to see much of him growing up. So didn't come from an entrepreneur family. But growing up, I always knew that I wanted to do something for myself, and got into the restaurant business at a very young age. And so at this point, I mean, I look back, you probably won't know this, but I'm 65 this year. And I'm very proud of it. I don't have 65 restaurants, but I've got, I think, 63 from the start, from when I began in the very beginning to now, having owned and operated so many of those restaurants. But love what I'm doing. And, I mean, there's so much to talk about as far as how it started and where I am right now. So I don't want to take up all of the time, but I will say this, that hard work, my dad said, will never kill you, but I'm telling him it almost did. So, yeah. But, no, I mean, you're never going to get anywhere in life unless you're willing to put everything you have into it. And find something that you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to enjoy it, you're not going to love it, and then you don't have any incentive to get to work every day. So that's what I've learned, the wisdom that I can pass on to people. And so we'll tell you about our journey as we go through, and I hope that answers some of your question.
How early did you start? You said you started at a young age.
Yes, I got into the restaurant business when I was 18, worked for a relative of mine, quit. I said I'd never be in the restaurant business ever in my life unless I could own it. And I worked for him for 2 years, quit, went overseas for 7 months, came back, was in love with food. If you've ever been to Europe, there's all these quaint little places all over, Italy, Paris. I mean, you can't not love food and drink coffee and wine and enjoy yourself. And especially fiestas in the afternoon, that's pretty cool too. So I came back and I was absolutely in love with food. I just wanted to be in the restaurant business. And so when I got back, I applied for a job. And I'll never forget, there was a little ad in the newspaper that said, looking for a working manager. And I got hired. And I landed up becoming this guy's partner, and we went on to open 36 restaurants together. So that's a long story. I'm not going to go in detail to that. But, I remember working 14, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, and, as a young kid. You got to do it. I mean, but there's if I look back now, I'd be a little smarter and not have to do it all by myself. Because, you try to control everything, but it's okay to delegate and give other people responsibility so you don't have to do all the work. So, yeah, it's been an amazing journey. And if you want me to explain how I met Thomas and if this is the right appropriate time, we can do that.
Well, one of the things that I find interesting is that you recently started sharing, Thomas, about how you studied and were an attorney and now you're a CMO. And so as a fractional chief marketing officer, I'm going, dude, that's an interesting pivot. How did that happen? And then I have a feeling that maybe how the two of you came together could intersect after that.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have a background in entrepreneurship. My parents were heavily against it. They're immigrants to this country. They're risk adverse. I went to law school. I went to undergrad and law school at UT. Thought that was going to be my path to happiness. I started life over at 27. I practiced 3 years, and I couldn't stand another minute of it. I quit without having a game plan. A lot of people think I quit being a lawyer and created Peli with Paul, and I took a very dark, weird journey to that point. I was kind of lost for a couple years, and I wanted to do something. What I did know is I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I wanted to have something of my own. I wanted to control my own destiny. If I'm going to work 100 hours, I want it to be towards something that belongs to me. And I want it to be something that I don't really consider work. Like I have a passion for it. Like it makes me want to do it. And that took a while to figure out. I was blessed to meet this guy in 2007 and, conned him into thinking that I could do marketing, branding, and PR. I didn't go to school for it, but I've always liked it. He gave me the opportunity, and we wanted to create South African, but for the mainstream. Paul has a passion for South African cuisine. He felt like it had never been done correctly, and gave me the opportunity to partner with him and to create what hopefully will be the concept that makes South African a viable food category in the U.S. I started as CMO. I became a general manager by default. Learned everything from the restaurant industry from him. I've taken over as CEO the last couple months, and it's just been a amazing journey. We have one of our employees in the back too, Vince, one of our rising stars, and it's been we still got a long way to go, but it's been fun.
Now, I understand you guys have a very different and unique interviewing style. Did you start that with him, or did you come up with it together?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I'm not a chef by trade. I have not been to school. I didn't go to the culinary arts or have a formal education in cooking. I was actually a restaurant operator. I learned how to operate restaurants, and by doing these, I watched and I looked and I learned. But I do have a flair for taste, and I usually do it through my nose, through smell, which I believe is the strongest sense that we have. And so I drive most of the kids that come out of hotel school nuts, because I ask them to go cook me their favorite dish, and they come and I said, there's something missing, and they go, what? You haven't even tasted it yet. So sometimes you have a gift for it. You don't know that you have that gift, but it's there, it's dormant. And it might take several years before that actually comes out. So, you might be going in one direction, and then all of a sudden you find yourself doing something else, and people say, oh my God, that's amazing. That's incredible. And then you find, oh, well, that's really cool. Let me exploit it a little bit more. And so I developed on my own to just cook. And I don't even look at recipes. I just pick something up. I say, oh, there's chicken. All right, let me see what I can do with chicken. And I think that's what makes our food so unique, is because I don't have a tunnel vision of how something should be done. If you go to a French school, you're going to have French cuisine or Italian or Spanish or Chinese or whatever it might be, or Asian food. So I'm not closed. I always think out of the box and create create food that is flavorful, that when you're tasting it, there's so much going on. You're questioning, is it this? Is it pineapple? Is it mango? Is it guava? But I'm with what spice is it? And it makes you like, hey, this was a culinary experience. And I don't know how I do it, but I do. I mean, it's like Tiger Woods. He can hit that ball, not anymore, but he used to be able to. They're absolutely amazing. But yeah, so sometimes we have a talent, for things that are dormant that we don't know it's there. And so Thomas helps me a lot because he's a foodie, man. I mean, he critiques me all day long. He challenges me. I mean, he says, "Hey, you think you can cook some Korean ribs in a South African style?" And we do, and we create it, and it becomes an amazing dish. So we complement each other a lot, and it's fun. We have. I drove him absolutely insane when we first met, because by default he became the front of house manager while I was in the kitchen, and I drove him nuts. He hated me. He actually hated me. I think I don't. Yeah, you did, right? Because I drove him nuts. I mean. Someone who doesn't know anything about the restaurant business, it's a learning curve,
Imagine your nagging father and mother into one. It was him. Like, so annoying.
So this is like my other child that, came from somewhere else. But so, yeah, we tend to, like I'm dad and he's one of my sons.
So I'm curious to ask you, Paul, though, what was it that you recognized in him when you hired him that allowed you to say yes?
Well, we met when I had pizzerias, and he said, "This is the best pizza I've ever had. And if I ever want to be operated, and if I ever want to work with anybody," because I took him in, we'd met, and he said, "Man, you got such a cool place." And so I took him around. I showed him my kitchen. He said, "Oh my God, everything is in place. Everything is so clean. Everything is so neat and tidy. And if ever I want to be in business with anyone, it would be with you." And so that's what really solidified it for me.
God. So 2 questions for our audience while I'm thinking about it. How many of you have actually had an opportunity to eat at Peli yet?
Oh, cool.
So almost half the room. And I lost the other question I wanted to ask.
I'll tell you what, you're all going to get an opportunity because we're going to give you a gift card later on. You're also going to get a book from us and a little passport to go to South Africa, okay?
Thank you for that. So back to, because this is something you guys do really, really well, because I've known some people who've worked for you.
Oh, great.
So I did the homework.
All right.
Is you do a really great job of how you hire people, how you train people, and the culture that you've built there. And a lot of times people don't understand that building culture is not an easy thing. It's not just as simple as bringing a ping pong table in and having beer. That's not culture. Those are just things that you do together. So what came first for you? Was it who you hired and then you started building culture from that, or were you real clear about what kind of culture you wanted to have, and therefore you looked for the people who could operate within that you knew were going to succeed in that? Because there's a lot of different doors you can walk through to do that.
We didn't start that way for sure. I mean, we started ruling the restaurant by fear, yelling at people. That's how restaurants do it, right? That's how we did it. We realized when we wanted to grow, though, that we couldn't possibly manage our teams that way. We were running them into the ground. We didn't really care about who they were. They're never going to take ownership that way. We weren't building people up. We weren't creating an environment for them to thrive and be coached and become the best versions of them. I think for us, we also had to realize that we can't only want them to perform while they're working for us. We started kind of creating an attitude that, hey, while you're here, we're going to help you become the best version of you, and we're acknowledging that may lead you to leave us, and hopefully you'll go on to bigger and better things. But when you do that and people understand that you have a vested interest in their well-being, they tend to want to work harder for you. We used to hire based on resume like everybody else does, and then we realized that, man, in the restaurant industry, it makes it very difficult to coach certain people because they have that experience. They're not coachable. They think they know better. We used to hire people from Fleming's and Cheesecake and all these bigger restaurant groups, and they were like, "Who are you guys?" You only have one location. You're South African. Who cares? I should teach you. And so for us, it was difficult to find, adequate people that really cared about their job. So we started hiring the opposite. We started hiring we are a review-driven restaurant. So ultimately, everything is run by our reviews. And, we are, that's why we're top 10 on TripAdvisor and Yelp. That's all we care about. So in order to navigate through that, you have to have people that care about pleasing other people. And so we started hiring people not based so much on experience, but on their personality, on how do they enjoy smiling? Do they have a happy disposition? If they have that, then you can teach a monkey how to open a bottle of wine. But to have someone legitimately want to care about a total stranger's dining experience, that's actually quite difficult. Not everyone does. And if they're only motivated by money, that presents another issue. Vince, one of our shining stars, didn't have a management background. He didn't have a lot of what you typically would want in a restaurant manager or a director. And he has been a product of he enjoys making people happy. If you read Peli Kitchen's reviews, 1 out of every 5 mentions Vince. We're proud of that, because I like to think that we helped build that, and we created a platform for him to thrive in and actually enjoy being there.
So just to add to that, attitude absolutely outweighs aptitude. If you have the right attitude, we can teach you anything, really. That's what it is. And I think that every business should think that way. It's those people who come in and think they know everything, you're not going to teach them anything. And they certainly aren't going to get along with you. Unless they want to run the company, and that's fine, let them do it.
When I hear that, one of the things that kind of surfaces and I want us to be thinking about is when you talk about the importance of attitude, I would think that would need to be different depending on what kind of company you are, because you're in hospitality. So yes, you need that more people-pleasing kind of personality. If you're in a high-tech business, you might need a really different kind of attitude. And so I bring that up to kind of challenge you guys to be thinking about what kind of attitude would be the one that should be part of the core values in your own company.
Actually, that's a good point. But I still think if you've got a good attitude, it's going to help no matter what you do, even if you're on the phone or you're looking at a computer screen. But that's a valid point, yes.
Well, and I think one of the things that we've learned as a team, and so I'm going to go a direction with you guys about teams and team building, is that really understanding who you are. And this is a component that I talk about a lot on Breakthrough Radio, which just reminded me we forgot to ask everybody to get cards. So if one of you guys will take care of that, because we give away books from the radio show and at every event. Team building, there's so many different ways to go about it, but there's a guest that I had on several years ago. Her name is Sally Hogshead, and she's written a book called Fascinate, and she actually has what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, God, I hate it when my short-term memory does that to me in the middle of a live event. But she has a process, a test, if you want to call it that. It's really a little different than that allows you to see how others see you. And it allows you to uncover what your primary and your secondary core qualities are. And we have found that to be so helpful to us as a team, because whenever we're talking about what we need to accomplish for that year, sometimes we'll say, okay, well, you do this and you do that and you do this, and we'll come together, and then, this stuff will all be done. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And so as the chapter director, I've looked at the times that it hasn't worked, and I've gone, okay, what went wrong? And then I learned to ask some different questions. Ooh, did they accept a responsibility to do something that allowed them to operate in their primary or secondary strength? Or was that responsibility an area that was quicksand for them? So I'm just curious, what kind of things have you guys used to help in team building or help your people, like you say, be better versions of themselves? that doesn't just come out of, rah-rahs every day. That comes out of really understanding and getting to know people, and sometimes using tools that allow you to do that. What does that look like for Pele Pele?
Well, I'll start off. I think the hospitality business is it's so complex, and you're always in front of people, and you're always you're going to be, your personality is going to come out. Your weaknesses will show, and so will your strengths. And so sometimes we put people in areas of weakness, but we have to recognize that quickly, because we don't want to build on their weaknesses. We really want to build on their strengths. Because if we build on their weaknesses, we're just setting them up for failure, really. So I think that's one of the key things that I do in the back of house. Tom does most of front of house now. And so for me, building a team that has a love for food and putting them in the right place. I mean, I might be the best dishwasher in the world, but then I haven't put you in that area, and I might have to discover that. So until I find that position for you, I might have to move you around quite a lot before that happens.
I mean, I'm a big proponent of relationships. A lot of people, they want to build culture, but they have an inability to really connect with people. They want people to buy their product, or especially if you guys, you're co-founding a product or a service, and I don't think enough emphasis is placed on legitimate relationships between yourself and your employees, right? So for us, I think we've taken the time. It's more than just team building. It's more than we just came from a happy hour with our staff. It's actually spending time with them, having legitimate relationships outside of work. Getting past that first level of, interaction and surface kind of questions, how are you doing? How was your weekend? Really getting to know them on a personal level. We've recognized that as our staff understands us better, our weaknesses are, being very transparent with them. I mean, my employees, especially my corporate, Vince probably knows just as much about me as most of my best friends do, because we share, I think a lot of founders kind of want to project a level of success, and they don't really allow their staff and team to see them, on both sides, and we're really good at being very transparent with our failures, our weaknesses, our mistakes, and I think they appreciate that, and they want to work harder for us because of that.
Yeah, it reminds me of when James and I sat down and we were working on some stuff for Placing, and we were talking about what kind of culture do we want to create, and he and I got really clear that we wanted, there was an experience that we wanted to have to invite people in from the community. It was going to be like a once a week dinner where everybody had to bring an ingredient. We were all going to get in the kitchen and we were going to cook together, and then we were going to sit down and we were going to eat it. And so, yeah, sometimes you think of really fun, unique ways to accomplish that, and sometimes it just shows up. One of the things that I find, and this is another great question I didn't realize I wanted to ask, is I find sometimes just taking an action will lead you to have something surface or bubble up that you never could have thought of had you wanted to. But when it shows up, you're like, oh, eureka moment, perfect. And then you're able to take a more informed action. But you had to take the first step even if you weren't sure what you were going to do, if you're going to succeed or fail. What's been one of those actions that you just took a step forward, but something really magnificent showed up later because you were willing to take that first step?
I think if I had to pick one thing, it would be trying to write. Well, I love writing. I'm a freelance writer for the Houston Press. I have a cover story. I've written about 7 articles for them. I love writing. And when I submitted my application to write, they were like, are you sure? Because you're the owner of Peli. Why would you want to do this? And, for me, I was like, I really love food. I was a really raw writer. But they took me under their wings and helped me develop my writing skills. And, it eventually enabled me to have a bigger platform to highlight things in the restaurant industry for the benefit of other restaurateurs. And so, for me, I didn't know where I was going to end up. It's probably one of the cooler things I've been able to do. And, now I'm able to kind of provide a platform to highlight some of the things that restaurateurs go through, so, we can help each other out. That was actually my cover story, all the mistakes that restaurateurs make when we open a restaurant. So to be able to start from there and end up with that experience was a cool thing. I didn't know where it was going to end up. It was probably one of the eureka moments I had.
Cool.
So for me, it's very difficult to come from one country to another and trying to explain to you what something is supposed to taste like. Now, I'm sure you probably can, on one hand, count how many South African restaurants you've been to in your life in America. There are very, very few. And South Africans are very, very stubborn. I'll just tell you this right now. This is how we do it, and we're not going to change, and that's the way it is. If you don't like it, and so most Americans say, go back to South Africa. But what I learned and what was instrumental in the change for me was allowing my staff to cook food and let them try to be creative, but then I come in and put the South African flair on it. And so that's what our food has become. It's an infusion of South African food, which is very palatable for the American palate. And that's, I think, the key to our success, is because I'm not closed-minded, I'm open-minded, not too much or my brain will fall out, but I try to at least be a little bit open-minded so that we can create this experience of flavor that is really good for the American public.
So I know one of the things that everyone was looking forward to learning about a little bit, and you guys have taken a really unique journey in this particular area of business, and that's all around funding. And so I also want to say hey to Abe, who just walked in from NextSeed, because they were one of those solutions that I know you guys have used. Paul, what did you first use? Maybe even way before Peli. How were you able as an entrepreneur to get your first restaurant? Because I think you said you became partners with someone and then you opened up like 36. How did you guys fund that?
Well, actually, my very first restaurant, I asked my mother if she would help me. And she said no. And, it's kind of like when you nag somebody so much that they just say, oh, all right. Well, my mom gave me her life savings. It was only $10,000 at that time. It was equivalent to the US dollars. And I was able to start my very first restaurant. I was very fortunate in that I took control of it. And I was able to pay my mom back within 2 years, double what she gave me. So she was very happy. And then that's when I joined another guy and we became partners. And, I think one of the things that I would stress on that we have learned recently is you have to have the finance available before you can open another restaurant. Don't go and open a restaurant without the money being there, because then you're behind. I mean, it's very difficult to catch up. And actually, that's how we started. We started Peli with an idea, and we were at the time when I think it was Hurricane Alicia when it went through, and I mean there was rain and there's 8, yes, and that's when we had the banking crisis. And the banks, we had a loan, and the bank denied the loan, and we had signed the lease, and we said, you know what, we're just going to do it. And by faith, I don't know how we did it, we pulled it off. We got, money from friends and family, and we actually, we refused to give up. And it's actually amazing how we actually put that restaurant together. In fact, I wrote a book. It's called From a Jew to the Stew, and it explains all the miracles that took place along the way and how that happened, and how Thomas and I and our other partner met. So, I think you have to have, you just have to believe that somehow it was meant to be, and you must never give up. Never give up. And here we are today. We have 5 restaurants, 2 more that we're currently building, and it's not an easy road. I mean, we're still struggling financially. We're still, making mistakes. We're still, you constantly are learning all the time. No matter how many, this is my 62nd restaurant, and I'm still making mistakes. So, if you think you've got it, then I think that's when you're going to lose it. You know, so it's always a learning process. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, you made me think of something else too, but I'm going to make a note so we don't get too off track because I want Thomas's feedback on this as well.
Okay.
You know, the only thing I want to kind of relate to you guys is, I'm assuming most of you guys are thinking of starting something or in the process of starting something. You're about to get a rude awakening in one of two ways. You know, I love it whenever I meet people that are about to start a new business or they're trying to create something, because one thing is going to be very obvious to you very quickly, and that is your body of work as it relates to other people. And what I mean by that is you're going to have to look, you're going to have to, you start with your friends and your family, and you're going to ask them, hey, man, will you give me $50 for my idea? And you're going to very quickly understand if you've really been a jerk all these years, or whether you've built a reputation of integrity, of intelligence. It's really funny, how many people realize that, man, there's not a lot of people that like me. I've actually been a bastard. Nobody wants to give me any kind of money. And they think it's a lot of times it's because of their product, but they don't realize it's because of them. I mean, most of the time, that is an underestimated thing. Founders put a lot of emphasis on their product. I think our product was great, but I think ultimately, the people that allowed us to live out our dream believed in us as people. They believed that we would do everything on our power to pay them back. They believed that we would care enough to work 24/7 to make this work. And so it all comes down to generally how people, all the relationships that you've built over the years. What does it mean at that point? If someone won't give you $100 for your idea, it's a problem.
I'm so glad you shared that with everybody, because that gives you guys all something new and different to go test and try. Even if you've already got a business, I would say come up with an idea and then just see if you can get someone to give you $50 to do a small test on something. I mean, self-awareness and self-learning is so underrated, yet it is extremely important for you to be able to succeed, and it will rip you apart. So
I'm going to give you one of the things that happened to me. I was able to start a pizza restaurant, and I had a deck oven that could cook 8 pies an hour. I had a phone, I had a refrigerator, and I had a little dough machine. And I would go stand out on the street corner handing out little samples as people were driving home. And of course the pie was good. So they'd come and they'd drive into the little shop that I had. It was like 800 square feet. And I began to build up a reputation as the guy standing on the street corner handing out little slices of pie, right? So then somebody said to me, you know what you should try? You should try and go to the school district and see if you can get into the school district. So I did. I went in front of, it was the Alief Independent School District. They had 14 schools. And I was at the right place at the right time. I went to see the nutritional department. This lady, Mrs. Sweeney, she was a huge woman. And, she cracked the whip. She was in charge of the nutritional department for the whole of Alief. And I presented myself to her, and she said, well, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm tired of the big chains, Domino's and Pizza Hut and Little Caesars and all of those godfathers back in the day and so on. And so I put a sealed bid in. And to make a long story short, I was awarded the contract. And she said to me, before I got the contract, she said, can you make 250 large pizzas by 11 o'clock Monday through Friday every day? And I said, sure I can, right? I can only do 8 an hour, all right? Serious, right? So I got the contract, and I was in panic mode, all right? So I run to the bank. I have no relationship with the bank. I meet the bank manager, and I get in there, and I say, hey, I'm in serious trouble. I've got a contract here for a year, and I need $175,000. He says, let me look at the contract. He says, is that all you need? And I'm looking at him, yeah, I think that's all I need. So get a contract, go to the bank, and the bank will give you money. That's it. So but that's how I started the pizza business, and it was absolutely amazing. I went in, I got deck ovens, and then I was awarded the contract for a second year, and then I decided I'm not doing this anymore. So that was great. But hey, so that's one way, you know. I mean, there's many ways to skin a cat, but that was one. That was pretty cool.
So one of the questions that the team wanted to learn about tonight, and I have a feeling you guys are all going to benefit from it, is that we were wondering, is there anything that you have taken from other industries or other businesses that's outside of the restaurant area that is something that you use in running Peli and has been really beneficial?
For me, you know, I love marketing, branding, and PR. I've always tried to learn from other industries, mostly things that I enjoy. You know, I'm always curious how Apple builds their brand, you know, Under Armour, things that I like wearing, and I try to understand, you know, why people tend to gravitate towards a particular brand and how that applies to our industry. Because at the end of the day, you know, Houston, you know, nothing against Paul, there's 12,000 restaurants out here. You know, there's a lot of great restaurants that have great service and great food. What makes a particular person continue to come back to a restaurant? If you're only going to survive if you have the best food and best service, I don't know. That's problematic to me. You know, it has to be more than just that thing. It has to be something that continues to make people feel good about dining at your restaurant, right? And so for me, I'd like to learn from other industries and figure out what that is. What do we need to do so that people feel better about eating his food? You know, what can we do to enhance their experience? How do I make them feel like when they look at Peli, they feel a certain way? You know, that's interesting to me.
Did I not answer that earlier, or is there something else I need to?
Well, I don't know. Do you want to give another experience that you've pulled from somewhere outside of the restaurant industry, or do you want to give the audience an opportunity to ask you their own question?
Yeah, I think that will be fine. I mean, Thomas always makes me look good. He's the marketing guy. He's supposed to make me look good. I think so anyway. But he does. He does an amazing job. I mean, he really does. And you can tell when someone has a passion for something. He loves doing this. I mean, you know, he writes. He's a writer. He indulges into finding things out about other industries so that we can see how we plug in. And one of the things that we do that he does an amazing job with is giving back to the community. You know, I was just thinking about Harvey, and we all of our restaurants survived, so we didn't lose anything, but we were able to somehow get together, and we thought, well, we're not going to have business for at least a week, you know, so why don't we just take the food that we have and give it to first responders and police, and then, of course, the Red Cross heard about it, and then we were able to serve 30,000 meals on that Monday and Tuesday out of our restaurant. So it was amazing what happened. And because of that, you know, it's like the law of reciprocity. If you give something, expecting something in return, you don't get anything. But when you begin to start giving things away because you're not expecting anything in return, then it's like the law of reciprocity. It just happens.